States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, just to let everyone know, is that we will be ending the meeting at 9:30 or thereabouts when that discussion is over, or earlier if we get there. So, excuse me, Susie, did you have something to say? Oh. Okay. Nate, you want to,
Well, to start off with special education, because we can get to it on Tuesday night. So Brian and Kim, if you could come forward. In your board book, it's under the tab that says pupil services. And begin from there.
Good evening. I think Susan's fear was that she wouldn't get to go this evening, that after us, and I think that might have been her concern.
Well, if you got right into the presentation, we might get to it.
All right.
says he the long wind.
We could all be as brief as the superintendent.
I know I am.
I wanted to begin with just a couple of handouts from some questions that came up on Tuesday evening. We've got copies for everyone, and we'll send them over to the Budget Committee members. The first one is regarding English as a Second Language program. Mr. Young had asked on Tuesday night. They're going around, Peter. Mr. Young had asked about sort of what the requirements were of the ESOL program, and I just put together something pretty briefly that I think captures what Steve was looking at. When we have youngsters who come to Londonderry who have either been adopted or as families have relocated here and have not been in any kind of an English-speaking scenario or school or program, the state has specific requirements. It's sort of a program of entitlement, if you will, that there are guidelines. And what I've done here is outlined when we have kids come in their first year of being in an American school, we are required to provide these children with between 2 and 4 hours of ESL instruction daily. I think it's fair to say that the state does not reimburse us or provides the costs to offset the operational costs for that. But then it's basically a step-down process, that the first year we provide between 2 and 4 hours of instruction, the second year we provide less, and the third year we provide less. And then as they got into their fourth year of being in our schools, historically we have put kids on sort of a monitor status. The state has recently changed the requirements, and now instead of just going into their fourth year being the criteria to no longer provide that level of intervention, they have to score a certain level on an exit test. So it actually means that we have a number of kids that are getting services for longer periods of time because for whatever reason they're not able to achieve that particular score on the test. So I didn't know if that hopefully was helpful and just kind of highlighted what Steve was talking about on Tuesday night.
Steve.
Thank you, Brian. I think the item I was trying to highlight too, and I appreciate you covering it in more detail for the community, was that we're talking about, and it sounds like it might be more or a longer duration than we initially thought, but we're talking about 24 students, we're talking about 2 instructors, and $120,000 in expense for those individuals. And it's just, it's $5,000 a person, and not to say that we shouldn't be doing it, but that the community should recognize that, we need to do it. It's a responsibility to do it. It's the right thing to do it. And almost as if we're in a situation like Claremont is, where, we're not like Manchester, where we have a whole lot of people with these needs, and we can spread those needs out over our instructors. I'm frankly amazed that you've got, how many different languages?
I think we have 13
different
different languages
and you found 2 people that can teach them.
And primarily, you're exactly right, Steve. When you have sort of some of the smaller school districts, or small in the sense of the number of ESL languages or the kids that require that, it's difficult because you don't have the need that you sort of have a programmatic capacity. So in other words, if we had 50 kids or 75 kids, we'd have more programmatic infrastructure, if you will, that we could sort of, group kids together better, or you'd have more kids at multiple grade levels, that sort of thing. But it is a struggle. It truly is. Additionally, Ron had asked, and I'll send two this way. Ron had asked for sort of an explanation of the so-called swap sheet, which is on page 241 of the budget book, the swap sheet that Anita puts together. What I've done with that is I've broken out the two positions, or the two programs that have the cost avoidance, and how those numbers were calculated. I'll wait till everybody has it before I explain it. The board is aware that we're looking to put an additional program at the middle school, which is going to be our Friends 3 program, which is a continuation of our program for children with autism and pervasive developmental disorders. What I've done is, for the Friends 3 program, if you look on the left, I've got the total staffing cost, which is for the teacher and 2 assistants. The 2 assistants are transfers, but for the sake of the model, I included that cost into it. And then on the right-hand side, if we didn't have this program next year at the middle school, we will be in a position that we have 2 children who will not be able to be educated in the Londonderry School District. And we will have the need to place these children in out-of-district programs. The reason for that is their particular needs are such that they need a substantially separate, self-contained kind of program, and we don't currently have that. So what I've got there is I've got what the tuition and the transportation costs would be for a program of that nature for those 2 children. The second one on the left, we've continued to see, and I'll talk more about this as we go through our presentation, but an increase at the LEAP level. So that's for our children who are 3 and 4 years old who have disabilities. And again, just to emphasize for the public, that we're required to provide programming for children between the ages of 3 and 21 if they have educational disabilities. But what we've continued to see is an increase in our LEAP numbers. And to add this program, to add this classroom, again, we're using existing staff. So as we're seeing sort of a drop at the elementary level, although it's going to be a bit uncomfortable for a year or 2, but if that trend continues, we're shifting existing personnel to create this new program for LEAP. I think Mike asked the other day about sort of, are these real numbers? And the reality is we have the responsibility for the LEAP children, for the 3 and 4-year-old children, to provide them access to what's called the least restrictive environment, which for these kids means access to kids who are typically developing. And if our numbers get to such a point where they're at a tipping point and we can't have what we call our inclusion children in our preschool program, we will have kids at the preschool level who are out of district. There are a lot of school districts that use that as their exclusive model. They have kind of all their kids are out in community preschools, and they have staff that go out to these preschools and work with kids. That's not the model that LEAP has had ever. LEAP has had an inclusion model where we've had kids come to us. But our class sizes, and I'll get more into this as we go, but the class sizes are as big or bigger than kindergarten classes. And we really don't think that's the right thing to do. So that's why we're adding that program. So these costs together come up with what that number is on the swap sheet of that cost avoidance. I think it's pretty conservative to say that for the LEAP program, I used $75 a day. That's a pretty conservative estimate. You know, anytime you're looking at out-of-district costs or transportation costs, these could certainly be higher. But for the sake of the model, I always try to be pretty conservative so that the numbers are really accurate with what we would actually be dealing with. The only thing I might point out is for the total cost avoidance, there was a typo on the swap sheet. It's $145,702, not $722. There was a $20 mistake on that. Okay, one more handout, or 2 more handouts. This This is an overview of the programs that we put in place between FY06 and FY09. This was another question that came up, or a discussion point on Tuesday evening. So I thought, just as a simple reference sheet, here it is. This kind of breaks out what we put in place, some of the programs that we've changed or expanded, and it's all on one sheet. And we'll talk about these programs as we go through, but I think there was discussion from some of the board members about having sort of just a breakout of what that is. Okay, all of that being said, our executive summary begins on page 291 of the book. What we'd like to do this evening is provide an overview of our 68-page executive summary. The overall budget for the Pupil Services Department for the FY09 budget is $2,021,888. This represents a decrease of $21,268. What we tried to do with the executive summary is provide some basic background information for people who might be interested in the services that we're required to provide, what some of the programs that we have in place. I kind of won't go into that unless the board would like me to, but we've had a number of these programs for several years, and some of the programs that we put in place I think the board's pretty aware of. But so we begin with an introduction in terms of special education being required federal and state mandates, and that we have to provide different kinds of services to children who have educational disabilities. To do that, we've developed a number of in-district programs over the last 5 to 6, 7 years. Some of the programs go back longer than that, but what we've seen is that we've been able to provide quality services to our children here in Londonderry, and we have expanded our capacity, sort of our programmatic infrastructure, to be able to incorporate kids into our local schools. And that's really been a philosophical commitment that we've stuck to and we've maintained. We've established these programs, and in addition to creating the programs to serve the kids here, there's obviously a cost avoidance that we've talked about as well. On page 299, I've provided an overview, as we did last year, of some of the things that we've seen in terms of trends and projections of our student population. Just to highlight a few of them, we continue to see an increase in students with autism and other pervasive developmental disabilities. This is currently 3.8% of our special education population, which has been continuously increasing every year. At the preschool level, we continue to see an increase in the population of our LEAP program. I'll highlight it. I know the superintendent talked about this on Tuesday night, but the LEAP program is one of the most fluid programs because we have children who turn 3 over the course of the school year. And if children are eligible for services, they are enrolled in the program at any point when they turn 3. So it's based on their birthday, not based on the school year. We have seen from October to October, looking at a multi-year average, we've had a 12% increase in our enrollment at LEAP over the last 7 to 8 years. And then from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year, we've had a 38% increase in our enrollment at LEAP. Last year it was actually 40%. But based on a multi-year average, over the course of the school year, we pick up another 38% of kids. So what we start with at the beginning of the year, we end up with 40% more kids. So this population, despite the fact that our elementary enrollment is kind of decreasing, we continue to have the numbers at LEAP that have really made the need for us to look at that, to keep an eye on that, to make sure we have the appropriate sections and the appropriate instruction for kids. Continuing along, we've had, as the population has shifted, we've had continuously increasing numbers at the high school. Over the last 6 years, we've had an additional 90 children, 90 students with IEPs matriculate through the high school. I think it's also worth noting that we're seeing a decrease in the number of children with specific learning disabilities, going from 49% down to 36.9%. So what we're seeing is our population is changing and our population is shifting, ranging from children with sort of more mild types of disabilities to children who have more intensive needs and are sort of further below grade level and really require an awful lot of remedial-based instruction. Continuing on to page 302. What we've done here is we put together a cost avoidance model of looking at all of our in-district special education programs, calculating how those programs I repeat again, the most important thing is that we're providing appropriate services to these children. But to the community, there's an added benefit that educating as many kids or all kids in the school district is a savings to the taxpayers of Londonderry. As we've done in the past, we've put together this cost avoidance model where we've taken the actual number of kids that we've had from FY06 projected out through FY09. We've taken the actual staff that are working with these kids and have come up with what would it cost us to send these kids out of district if we didn't have these programs, and then factoring in what are the staffing costs and then what are the net savings. I will tell you that when we did this, we did use actual teaching costs for all of the teachers. We used an average for the assistants. So rather than sort of playing around with this assistance at this level, we used an average for them. But you can see that it is pretty dramatic, and other school districts our size do have these numbers built into their budgets, that they don't have the in-district programs, and they end up with significantly higher out-of-district costs. We used pretty conservative numbers for transportation. We looked at, as we do with our current population, we use ride sharing, which means that if we can partner up with another local school district that's going to the same place or a similar place, that reduce the cost for both school districts. We continue to do that whenever we can. But essentially, on average, if you look at from FY06 through FY09, we have an annual average cost avoidance of $3.5 million. And going out from FY06 to FY09, this total is over $14 million. So we feel good about the fact that we're educating our kids in the local community and that we don't have a situation like a lot of communities where they're putting kids on buses to go an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half away from their homes to be educated. Also wanted to point out that as the whole school district is looking at how we can save on paper, one of the things that we put in place this year, the board will remember last year that we had purchased a few computers and some data projectors to change the way that we're doing some of our IEP meetings. We're moving to go to a sort of a paperless meeting, and based on some preliminary numbers, we think that's going to save about 150,000 sheets of paper per year. Because when we have these meetings, we would typically come in, everyone at the table had a draft, everyone had a copy of it. These documents are 10, 12, 13 pages long, and instead of that, we're putting things up on the screen and going through them as a group. Special education is a very paperwork-intensive entity. That's never going to change, despite the fact that there are always promises that's going to happen, but we're trying to do what we can for that as well. If you turn to page 306, Kim will give you an overview of the special transportation.
The total projected budget for special transportation is $679,270. We are in our first year of a 5-year contract, which the board will recall we negotiated with the provider last year. We have continued, as Brian said, to utilize ride-share opportunities with other communities, and our contract has a no-fuel escalation clause, both of which have helped keep costs down. We have 7 in-district buses. We provide a monitor on each of those, and we believe that that's required for safety. We transport on those 7 buses 107 children. We have 13 students going to 9 out-of-district placements, and we provide transportation for our extended year summer program to approximately 200 students each summer. So the total of the in-district, out-of-district, and summer costs are the $679,270.
Moving along, Kim, if you would talk about the out-of-district accounts.
Our out-of-district tuition accounts represent 18 students that are projected to need out-of-district placements for the fiscal 09 year. We have 6 at the elementary school level, 11 at private high schools, and 1 at a public high school. That includes 1 student who is residentially placed and the tuition is broken out by the instructional cost and the room and board cost. I will point out that on the spreadsheet on page 308, the FY09 budget for the room and board was projected to be $42,000. When we get to the budget analysis, it is $40,000. The budget analysis is the correct number. We have projected an increase that we now know will not be as large, and so we corrected that on the budget analysis. The total out-of-district tuition account is $999,238. I did some quick subtraction of that 2,000. It is in the budget analysis.
Okay. One last handout, and I apologize for this. This is a chart that we had sent to Anita as a multi-page thing, and she only saw the first page, so that was our mistake. This is a chart that the board will recognize that we've had for a number of years. When we look at our student numbers, which we base all of our services, our staffing, and all of our supports on, overall, our numbers have been pretty consistent for about the last 7 or 8 years. We're running about 1,000 children in the school district that have special education needs. This chart, you can actually may want to number it if you'd like. You can put it in as 316A, because it really goes along with page 316. Page 316 is probably the easiest way to look at. Peter, if you would pull this up. This is just basically a chart that shows over the course of the last, from FY03 through FY09, what our population has done. And essentially what we've seen is we've seen an increase at LEAP. Can you turn it sideways, Peter? We've seen an increase at LEAP, and we've seen a slight decrease at the elementary level, and we've seen a pretty significant increase at the high school level. Our out-of-district numbers, if you look at that chart, have continued to drop every year over the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, as we've already discussed. The previous charts, if board members are interested, do break out our enrollment and our anticipated services. The charts are a little overwhelming. If you look at page 310 through 315, but that really does kind of give us a sense. If there were specific questions, be happy to answer. But it breaks it out for us so that we know who's who, who's where, what they're getting for services, and that we can look at and anticipate what our staffing needs are going to be based on those service needs. From there, we get into what our staffing levels are. I won't spend a lot of time on this because the superintendent went through personnel on Tuesday evening and did go through line by line. So the only thing that I will tell you is we've kind of put this together as a different look, and we broke it out by school. So for example, if you look at page 320, we break out what all the positions are at the high school. This is professional staff. The one thing that's different from what Nate presented is this includes positions that are federally funded out of the IDEA grant. So some of the positions weren't mentioned by Nate because they're funded through the IDEA grant. And if you look at this, it goes school by school. It gives a breakout of what we have for personnel, who's general fund, who's federal fund, and how much. The next section that brings us to is our special education assistants, which starts on page 327. And the charts are on page 328. Kim?
Similar to the charts you just flipped through, this gives you another look at our assistant staff in the current fiscal year and what we project for the next fiscal year. The total daily assistant hours remains the same at 958.6, and that includes general fund and federally funded through the IDEA grant. The change between FY08 and FY09 would be the reallocation of staff, and that was already presented by the superintendent in terms of swapping the assistants into programs that need them for FY09. But I did bold it on the chart on page 329, any of those changes.
The next page, Peter, if you go to 331, is kind of a easy-to-see graphic of some of these reallocations that we've been talking about. Essentially, this is what we're recommending based on what our student needs are and what we're seeing for anticipated services for kids. So that if you look at this, I know Nate talked about this on Tuesday night, but it's just, I think, kind of clear and easy to see looking at the chart. We're recommending the movement of one teacher from South School to the high school. I'll talk just a little bit about that. We've got an influx of kids going into 9th grade next year, and our current case management model, if we don't add a position at the 9th grade, the case managers will have 39 children on their caseloads. By adding or moving this position, we'll be able to keep that at 26, which is more in line with what all the other case managers at the high school are. So that's the rationale for that. We're also moving assistants from South School and from our All Elementary Friends 2 program to support the Friends 3 program, so that we're only asking for the teaching position for that. And then to staff the new LEAP classroom, we're moving a teacher from Matthew Thornton, 6 hours of assistant time from North, and 6 hours of assistant time from Matthew Thornton. The next section is the IDEA grant. I'll just go through this quickly. We don't know what our particular entitlement will be for FY09. We actually don't get that for quite some time. But I've listed here what we received for FY07 and what we received for FY08. For FY08, our total, this is our federally funded money that we received, was $1,045,466.30. This represented a 0.69% increase from the year before. All of our IDEA money goes directly to salaries. If you look at page, in the back in the revenue section, page 586, there's a breakout of how that money is allocated. Again, it all goes to staffing. But in the revenue section,
With some equipment stuff too.
that's right, with some equipment. The next section is a brief overview of our strategic plan. The board received our presentation a couple weeks ago, but this is for the public or for members of the budget committee. This kind of overviews the areas of programmatic expansion, curriculum work, professional development, as well as some policy work and some operations. As with the rest of the school district, we have a detailed strategic plan that outlines what the vision and the direction of our program is. Next, I'll get into page 335, our budget requests. This year, we are requesting that the board support the increase of our high school special education program director from 220 days to 240 days. The rationale for this is due to increases in the enrollment at the high school. The demands of the position have surpassed the current 220-day contract. Over the past 5 years, we've added the EH self-contained program, the Flex program, and we've increased enrollment in replacement classes, requiring additional sections of each of those. We've also expanded our ACT program to include a number of different components, such as our Work Opportunities program. And what the high school special education position has become is a 12-month program due to student scheduling needs, summer training, staff training, ongoing parent needs, as well as our extended school year program. It's worth noting that the special ed program director at the high school is responsible for the supervision and evaluation of 70 employees. Additionally, we're requesting a teacher for the Friends 3 program. We've talked about this, but basically what we have is our Friends 2 program, which is located at Matthew Thornton School. We have 2 children who are in 5th grade and are matriculating to the middle school next year. We are predicting that in the years to come, based on our enrollment, we'll continue to see that increase. But even with the 2 students, we think that there is a cost savings, and we're keeping kids in our school district. And as I said before, that does have a direct cost avoidance for that program of $39,101 for those 2 children. In summary, through the investment of in-district programs, the Londonderry School Districts continue to meet the federal and state mandates of special education while providing high-quality programs for our students and families. The number of costly out-of-district placements continues to remain extremely low for a community our size or smaller. All of the initiatives we have in our strategic plan, we feel provide a high-quality program for our students and also allows us to make continuous growth for what we do for kids. And we'd like to thank the board and be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board? Steve, you got one?
Do other communities in our region do they all have programs like LEAP?
They are all required to educate preschool children, but there are a number of smaller communities that have a contract. I'll use Amherst as an example. The Amherst School District does not have their own preschool program. They send all of their kids to like one out-of-district program that's kind of like a consortium. So they don't actually have their own employees and their own people. They send them to RSCC. It's called the Sunrise Childhood Center. But other school districts have only had a self-contained type of program for the most disabled kids and have had their kids in local community preschools and send staff to them. It is more cost-effective to have your own programs. I think some of the school districts struggle with space, and they also struggle with if you only have 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 kids at the preschool level, which a lot of school districts do, then for them, it makes sense to have them in community placements because they don't have to staff their own programs. So it kind of becomes, when you get to the tipping point, it becomes more cost-effective and a better program to have kids in your own facilities.
You indicated that you're adding a class to the LEAP program this year. How many physical rooms do we have left at Moose Hill?
In terms of rooms left, I guess I would maybe defer to Bonnie, but the last room, as I understand it, that's not being used directly for instruction, that we've had discussions with the superintendent about, has been the training room.
The technology.
Right, that's, the intent is to use that room next year. As this room, because that's really the only room that we have that's open. The other room that we have is the one that we use for a library, if I remember correctly.
So if we were to increase the number of inclusion children, in other words, just for the public, to simplify it, if we were to increase the number of regular ed children that we would tuition in to mix with the special education LEAP children, that we would not have the physical facilities to do that.
This additional classroom will allow us to tuition in more students, but at some point, say for example, if it was the board's pleasure to have a 1-to-1 ratio, I think you're exactly right, Steve. I don't think we'd have the classroom space to be able to do that kind of a ratio.
And I know I asked the same question last year, but the ratio that we do have?
The ratio that we shoot for is 1 student to 0.6. And essentially what happens is we start off with a better ratio than we end the school year with when we pick up that 40% of those kids. So sort of towards the end of the school year, we're kind of tipping a little bit that we're getting away from the ratio that we'd like.
And you target 1 to 0.6, one special education student to 0.6 regular education student.
At the beginning of the school year.
And the industry's optimum number?
Well, I think I would say Lynn would probably agree the optimal would be 1-to-1.
Thank you.
I mean, the reality is when you have an inclusionary program and you have children with disabilities and children without disabilities, a typically developing 3-year-old is still a lot of work. So, you know, even though they're typically developing, they're not special education children, they're still 3-year-olds, so.
Dan?
Brian, the other evening, the superintendent told us that there's, I forget the exact number, but somewhere in the vicinity of 76 or state-required reports and 8,000 or 9,000 hours that take to do that. Is there, and I assume a lot of that's done by our staff on their own time as well, but is there any reports, a couple years ago Nessus came to be, is there any reports on the horizon that we should give consideration to that's going to be even additional taxation of our staff, time, money
Particularly at the
that's looming out there?
I don't know that there's any new ones coming, but last year we had 2 new report requirements that we dealt with. Our staff at Moose Hill, I have to say, is absolutely incredible because they dealt with a new mandate. And this was a federal mandate. We actually can't blame this one on the state, surprisingly enough. But the federal mandate was for something called preschool outcomes. Lynn and her staff presented at the last C3 meeting an overview of what these requirements are. And for each classroom, there are 3 to 4 hours of data entry that we have to submit to. It's a website-based program. School districts were encouraged to sort of choose a vendor, and you have to report all this data, and then you have to run reports for the federal government. And the amount of time that it takes to do this, collect all this information on these 3- and 4-year-old children, is overwhelming. The board will remember last year we had the good fortune of transferring some hours of secretarial time to the LEAP program. That has been extremely helpful. We're essentially running a program at the end of the school year that we've got about 100 kids with IEPs in that program, plus your inclusion kids. And the state reporting requirements are overwhelming. Between Nessus, scheduling all the child checks that we do throughout the year, all the data, all of the paperwork that we have to do, it's an awful lot of time.
I guess I appreciate that, and I appreciate the staff's time, but my question is there anything of that magnitude, I guess your answer was no, that we see
Not that we're aware of.
Okay.
The only caveat to that, Dan, will be the status of the new special ed regs and what the state does as far as adopting it. They've now put it on hold, but some of the proposals that were being put forth would substantially increase paperwork and paperwork reporting. But right now, that's on hold, so that's the only thing that's potentially on the horizon.
The horizon being 2010?
The special ed rules are being revisited by the Department of Ed, and they've already started the rulemaking process. We believe we'll see new rules within a year.
So,
And the
but it wouldn't affect this budget?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
George? Thanks, Ron. Brian, with Dan's question in mind, and let's say everything stays level, I mean, it's clear that our needs at the high school and the number of students that we've got is going up, but what's also clear from page 316 is a far less severe decrease occurring on the elementary level. And I had asked this maybe a year and a half or maybe even 2 years ago about the need for a program director or building director, building coordinator in each of the 3 elementary schools. Do you foresee a time, if we continue on this path, that we can reduce those 3 to maybe 2 and utilize, those 2 individuals to handle the 3 buildings and perhaps free up another position for, more direct student contact?
I think it's hard to say.
It's got to have a crystal ball, but I'm just trying to think ahead.
The reality is, even if the numbers can be misleading, because even if the numbers are decreasing, what we're seeing is an increase in the severity of kids, ranging from children with autism to children who are multiply disabled on feeding tubes, have a lot of medical needs, nursing cares. So the complexity of kids that we're seeing is continuously increasing. The other thing that's increasing is the complexity of the law. In 2004, the federal law was reauthorized. And in special education, the folks sitting at the back of the room, and I know the question was asked on Tuesday night, I think Mike had asked if there was a way that the principals could oversee special education. I think that kind of goes in line with what you're talking about, George. And what we see is the complexity of the special ed law is mind-boggling. And you have to have somebody who has an incredible depth of knowledge about the law, the processes, and how to make that actually play out in the schools. And unfortunately, if you didn't have somebody who had that level of expertise, they could do something that would be a screw-up that would cost you a lot of money. So I think, is it possible if the elementary enrollment continues to decrease? I think it probably is at some point. I don't know when that would be.
Sure.
But, if the enrollment continuously decreases, then I think probably at some point it would be. But with the addition of new programs, with the complexity of kids, I don't see that on the horizon. And the complexity of the law.
Thanks, Brian.
Brian, Ben, any questions? Okay. Brian, we call them program directors. Are we unique in Londonderry to have people at each of the schools to do the coordination?
I think in some sense we are. I think other school districts have different models. I think the model that we have is the most efficient model. Other schools, for example, might have an assistant principal who's in charge of special ed, but then you tend to have people who may not have the level of expertise that our folks have. Some school districts have a person, every school has to have someone who has the ability to make financial decisions on behalf of the school district. That's a requirement of special education. So there has to be someone, it's called the LEA rep, but you have to have somebody who can commit district resources. Some school districts will use sort of a top-tier veteran teacher and then pay them like a department head, like a stipend in other words, but you still have the same kind of model. So other schools do it differently. Some schools, to George's question, that are small, the principals do serve as the LEA rep. But I think it's important to remember that Londonderry is in the about the third or fourth largest school district in terms of special ed numbers. So it really is important that we have people who know what they're doing. It keeps us out of trouble, and it really makes sure that we provide the right services to kids and really implement sort of the vision and the strategic plan that we're trying to achieve.
Okay. Let me follow up, Brian. Would it be possible to give us an oversight, not the job description, but an actual, what do they do? I mean, I think that's what a lot of people, myself, that are not involved in special, what is their day? I mean, I don't think they're sitting under their palm trees eating bonbons for the whole day. So what is it that they do during a day or a week? The meetings, all that stuff. Give us an idea of what does that position entail?
Specifically at the elementary level?
Yeah, let's say at the elementary level right now, and because that's what the
And
question
I maybe
is.
would ask Cheryl to wander up as much as she probably doesn't want to. She could tell you better than me. But essentially, the components of the job that you're going to have is conducting meetings. So that would range from the entire special ed process. So beginning with children who teachers might have concerns about, children who come to referral, looking at testing, all the way through the special ed process to IEP and review and stuff like that. So every one of the children that we have in our special ed programs have multiple meetings a year potentially. Some students have 2 meetings, 3 meetings. Some students have significantly more frequent meetings. The special ed program directors are responsible for the supervision and evaluation of all the professional staff and all of the assistants. So when we talk about, at each of our schools actually, I can tell you that the program directors, for example, at the elementary level, at North School, Linda Kuchar is responsible for the supervision and evaluation of 38 staff. At Matthew Thornton, Cheryl's responsible for the evaluation and supervision of 52 staff. And at South School, Grace is responsible for the supervision and evaluation of 42 staff. So that includes professional staff and assistants. In addition, one of the things that I think is unique to Londonderry is the administrative teams at our elementary schools truly function as a team. So the special ed program director is very involved with looking at assessment data, developing action plans for at-risk kids, providing additional services, professional development, working with teachers, observing kids, making recommendations to teachers, and really seeing the whole learning process through. They're also very involved with, the board will remember over the last couple of years, with the implementation of our 3-tier reading model, that all of our students that are in the 3rd tier are primarily receiving services, whether they have an IEP or don't, are receiving services from the special ed department. So all of the scheduling that goes along with who are these kids, when are they going to be serviced, how, all of those administration responsibilities. Additionally, the board will remember last year we put a remedial math program, a research-based math program in place called Number Worlds. So the program directors have been involved with implementing that program, making sure the teachers are using it to fidelity, working with teachers, setting up the groups, supervising groups. So the administration responsibilities are very time-consuming. And also, it's important to remember that when we're talking about kids with disabilities, there's an awful lot of parent contact that goes on, and it's pretty specialized parent contact, because when parents call with questions or concerns, they need to get somebody who knows what they're doing and who can make decisions on behalf of them or their kids and make sure that the appropriate things are in place. So in terms of a day-to-day, week-to-week operation, I don't know, Cheryl seems to not have moved, but I know Nate has the job matrices.
Right.
Oh,
Let me just give you, a
There's a
simple
cornucopia.
sample, and then we can get to,
What I'm looking for is something in writing so we can hand out to the budget committee and to us to see what that position is.
I got it. Yeah, no problem.
I've got another question for you. I did have a resident stop me, a friend, and ask the question is, why are we spending, somewhere in the area of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on some students? And what I look at here is, first of all, why are we sending these students out of district? Why does that come up, and why is the cost so expensive? That is I average it out, just doing rough math, is somewhere around $50,000 a student that we're sending out. Why is that happening?
well, the first.
Why does it cost so much?
Sure. Why does it cost so much? The first thing is the state of New Hampshire, the Department of Ed sets the rates of those programs. So programs don't have free range to charge whatever tuition they want. There's a process that the Department of Ed has that the rates have to be set by the DOE. So in terms of where do these costs come from, they actually come from the Department of Ed. But moreover, how do they get to those? They get to those by very low student-to-teacher ratios. That's the first piece. So there's an awful lot of staff. So the programs that we have sent kids to might have very low ratios, might have an awful lot of assistants, different kinds of specialists, speech and language, OT. The other thing that they have that sometimes is a struggle for public education is they have bigger facilities and more space. So that for programs that we have, if you go into a 900 square foot classroom or an 1100 square foot classroom at Matthew Thornton School, we might have 22 kids in there. If it was an out-of-district program, they might have 3 or 4. So that's really what drives it. But I also think it's worth mentioning, Ron, of our out-of-district children, there are very few that, it's pretty rare for the school district to be at a place where we're recommending out-of-district programs. We have in our out-of-district numbers all the students who are placed by the court. These are programs that we have no say over, more or less. So kids who have been placed for whatever reasons, whether they're delinquencies or abuse and neglect scenarios, children in foster homes, all of those kids are represented in our out-of-district numbers. Additionally, I know the board is aware, but I'll just let the budget committee know, if students with IEPs are in a position where they're having discipline scenarios, suspensions, expulsions, that sort of thing, they're still entitled to education under the federal law. So it is expensive. It is absolutely expensive, and I think that's also, Ron, why we've been mindful of creating our own in-district programs to keep kids here. Again, the first reason is because we feel we provide as good of a program as the out-of-district placements. And I can tell you, I've been to about every out-of-district program that if you drew a geographic circle around this area, I've been there, Kim's been there, we've looked at these programs. There's no magic wand. There's no secret that they're doing. And I think we have better staff than these places are able to hold on to. Very often there's a lot of staff turnover at out-of-district programs because they aren't part of the state retirement system. They don't have the course reimbursement. They don't have the benefit package that public schools have. So I don't think that the private placements are doing a lot better job than we are. I just think that sometimes it comes down to the costs are driven by the staffing at these programs.
Okay.
I have
Ben.
a question. I guess I'm asking for an impression. Much of the justification for this has been based upon federal law or state requirements. And in Londonderry, we've added a lot of programs, I guess in the belief that we are enhancing the child's learning opportunities. So flip it over to the other side. I'm just, again, asking for impressions. At the end of the day, after we've done these things, and we've done, I believe, more than the minimum requirement is, are we improving lives? Is it your impression, or are we just, are we actually coming up with some other result other than just meeting the minimum requirement required by law?
I think we absolutely are changing lives. We're allowing, particularly for our students that are in our programs, these are kids that if they were in other school districts may not have the ability to be in their local neighborhood schools, first of all. The other thing is, if we look at and analyze our assessment data, at the end of the day, we've got kids who are really doing some great learning, and we've got some teachers that are, I mean, think about the benefit of teaching kids to read, teaching kids to be able to control their emotions. I mean, it's really, at the end of the day, I think we're absolutely doing amazing things. And we have an incredibly talented group of professionals in this town that make that all happen.
Brian, you came up with a number of the special education children that graduated high school this past year. How many of them went on to a secondary education?
That's a number, Ron, that we are starting to track now. Mr. Dolphin had that. I don't have that. That is something that Mike and I had talked about, Jim and I had talked about with Connie as well, that we've kind of had a hard time knowing exactly what that is, but anecdotally, we thought we had about 80% of our kids going on to some form of post-secondary education, whether it was the tech school, a 2-year college, or a 4-year college. But that is something that we do want to do a better job of. The other thing that we're interested in, Ron, is of the kids who went to college, you know, how many stayed in? Because some of the alarming statistics that we see is the number of kids that end up dropping out or sort of within that first year of college. So I would also maybe put a plug in that 2 weeks ago we had a job fair at Londonderry High School where we had 13 different colleges and programs, post-secondary programs. Connie Bodrisky set this all up and worked with, we actually invited students from Pinkerton and some of the other local high schools to come. We had students from Alvern, and we had a college fair for our kids with disabilities. So each of the colleges set up booths, and parents could go around and ask questions, find out what was available for different kinds of programs. So we are lucky that we have a community that really values kids going on to post-secondary school, and we've tried to continue to open as many of those doors as we can. We have kids who are taking advantage of some of the scholarship money that Mr. Dolphin has put in place through the articulation agreements. So we do have kids, the majority of our kids go on to college. I can't give you a specific number. That's something that we do want to do a better job to track over time.
Okay. If I ask for a number, and I look at this out-of-district placements per number of students, or, you know, do a division on that, and how do we compare to the local districts? Could you come up with something? I know you don't have the top of your head.
I do. If and I don't want to talk about
Okay.
any specific.
No, just give A, B, C, and D.
We're about 1/3.
1/3. So
Yes.
we send out 1/3 of the average around here of students that go out of district.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Budget Committee.
Yeah, several questions, most of which are data points, Brian. You mentioned we're the third or fourth largest in terms of special ed students. Who's ahead of us in that category?
We are, well, Manchester and Nashua. And then, according to the state, there's the next cohort, which are the other group of large school districts, includes Concord, Londonderry, Merrimack, Rochester, Salem. Derry isn't included in that because their students go to Pinkerton for high school. So for the sake of this, they're not counted in that. And then Timberlane, thank you, Kim, and the seventh one escapes me.
And I think it's important to note that Brian's talking gross number as opposed to percent.
That's right.
So there's a difference between the two. So, just because of numbers, and just a quick follow-up, because it just went back. In 2004, we had 33 students placed out of district. We're projecting in 2009, 18. There's a significant difference.
And at that time, 33 wasn't bad either.
Okay, second
pickup,
question,
Peter.
I think Ben was talking about it. You know, if the layman looked at this, you see lots of programs from page 291 to 298. How does, programmatically, how do we compare to these other schools? It sounds like you've got a good handle on what's going on elsewhere. Do we have a significantly higher number of programs or not?
Yes.
Okay,
We do.
all right.
And just so it's clear, we have higher number of programs because we've endeavored to keep kids in the district.
Yep.
And I
Okay.
think that's important.
Yep. You mentioned the paperless meeting, and that really got my radar going. Do you have any sense for what 150,000 sheets of paper would save the district, just in your department alone?
I didn't cost out what it, how many pages, how many reams.
What is it, 500 pages in a ream, right?
Exactly, right. 500 pages in a ream.
And we have no,
300 reams, and a ream is going for
300 reams, unprinted,
times about,
unprinted.
yeah, 300 times 30, about $9,000 in paper.
Okay. So even though it sounds like you have a paper-intensive environment,
Incredibly.
that seems like a program that any department could implement quite easily.
I would defer to Nate on that.
Okay.
But, essentially, Mike, what we're trying to
didn't hear
do
me.
is, we're, in terms of, when a parent comes into a meeting.
What was
and
the question?
The question was, if we're able to go to this paperless meeting system, are there other departments that could use a similar model?
We are doing that in a number of areas. Let me give you an example. Almost all our internal communications now are done
Yep.
email. Okay, talking about that. We are putting up our student handbooks, faculty handbooks, the copyright handbook, all up on the web. Okay, and we're also in the process of developing, for lack of a better term, mass email lists to parents so that parents can opt to have school notices sent home to them electronically as opposed to paper. So we're working our way through all of that stuff. And you'll see when the elementary principals come up to report, Jim and Andy, they have included in all their sections cost savings measures, a number of which are directly related to using technology to cut back on paper. Carol calls it going green. And I think that's the way it's listed there. So yes, we're doing that.
Okay, great. Just a quick follow-up to Ron's question, because obviously $1 million for 18 students is it just blows me away that we actually have to pay that, $55,000 per student. Are we positive there's no other way to keep those kids in this district? I mean, our hand is forced every time?
Well,
The courts wouldn't want a student in a better environment with these programs? I don't understand that.
The short answer to your question is, yes, that's the only option, in essence, the only option we have left available. The youngsters that we have placed out of district are youngsters that have such significant disabilities, or they're so unique that it's more cost effective to have them go out of district
Really?
than it is to have them placed here.
All
And
right.
some youngsters need, in essence, 24-hour care and need an intensive therapeutic setup that we do not have. So our model is to the maximum extent possible, provide programs and services for kids here. It's only those youngsters whose needs have reached such a point that it becomes impossible for us to provide an appropriate level of programming for them that we offer an out-of-district placement. And in some cases, we have no control, because if it's a court-ordered placement, then that's completely out of our control.
Okay.
But there's the shorter answer.
But Mike, I would add one more thing. There have been a number of situations where kids were placed by the court and might be in a foster home or a group home or something like that, and we've been able to keep them in our Londonderry schools so they don't show up on this list, and that we have kids that we incur transportation costs, but we do have kids who might be in an alternative kind of court placement residentially or a foster home, that we're able to keep kids in our local schools.
Okay. Assuming other schools our size, and you mentioned that whole group, have the same, approximate increases in sped population that you've been seeing, and assuming the cost avoidance model could be applied there as well, that's uniform for them, And assuming that the 14 million cost avoidance over a short 3 years is accurate, and I'm assuming that is, why on earth would they choose to not do what we're doing? It makes no logical sense to me that they would build it into their budget unless financially it makes sense for them to do that.
Part of the answer has to do with space, and available space for them to house these programs. That's a major component part of, that's one, Mike. Second is, depending upon the cohort number of youngsters that they have with specific disabilities, they may have a variety that they can't form a program for. And therefore, even though they're sending kids out, for them that in fact may be a more cost-effective way, because they simply don't have the critical mass, for lack of a better term, to form to have a particular program. That's part of it. And give you a perfect example of how space impacts it. If we didn't have Moose Hill School and LEAP was still in its old place where it was, which was next to Steve's old office, there would be a number of students that are in a LEAP program that we would be sending out of district, simply because there was no space or space available.
Okay. Last question. Each year we hear a lot of talk about state requirements, the paperwork intensive due to that, laws. From Brian, from a professional standpoint, and Kim as well, do you believe that that's necessary? Is the state, no,
We don't.
no, listen. I'm being serious. We have a lot of state reps in town. We have people who would entertain a discussion to lot, but if professionally you feel that's necessary, that's one thing. If you feel it's unnecessary, why aren't we doing something about it?
Couple things. The reason that all of the paperwork and the legal process is there is to protect the rights of students. So it starts with the federal government, comes down to the state, but the reason we have to have the number of meetings, we have specific composition of teams when we meet, all of the requirements are there to protect the rights of children. It's important to remember that special education is a program of entitlement. So the people with the laws are the kids, not the professionals. But I would tell you, Mike, that beyond the scope of what the federal statute requires, our state is going beyond what the federal law is requiring. So, for example, I'll use a simple example that has direct cost impact for school districts. The federal law gives us 60 days from the time a parent gives consent to evaluate a child to the time that we have to have a meeting. So within that 60 days, we have to get a kid, test them, write up the report, schedule a meeting, and have a meeting. Our state decided to keep it at 45 days. So that extra 2 weeks, we don't have the luxury of. So that sometimes means that depending on what our particular test loads are, we're really strapped. Additionally, Nate indicated that the New Hampshire rules, so at the federal level, you've got the federal law and then the federal regulations. At the state level, you have the state laws, which are the RSAs, which for special education is 186C. And then you have the state regulations. The state regulations are all being reworked and redone, and they supersede the federal requirements all over the place. So despite the fact that we'd like to think that the paperwork requirements are being reduced, the state of New Hampshire has chosen in the drafts that they've proposed to supersede, to go beyond the federal statutes. And there are 5 bills that are going through to revise sections of RSA 186 that, again, go beyond the federal requirements. Perfect example is there was a state Supreme Court case that ruled that school districts weren't required for something that's called mapping for cochlear implants. Okay? We have a state law to make us do that. So even though there's a federal Supreme Court decision that school districts aren't responsible for that, there is legislation pending in this state to make school districts responsible.
Okay. I'm glad I asked that question. All right, I'm done. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, guys.
Budget Committee, Tom?
John, you have a question?
No.
Nate, you mentioned the federal requirements, federal reports you have to do.
What's the process of that? Is it paper generated? Is it some sort of web-based system?
It's actually, it's a combination. Give you an example. The final reports wind up being generated electronically. But for Medicaid reimbursement, what we have, because assistants track some of that time as well as teachers, they basically track it on a timesheet, which indicates the student, what the specific service was, how many hours, and then that's put through on paper, and then that's collated. So the information, and then that's collated at a building level, and it's sent down here. So to the extent possible for us, we've put everything in electronically. Then sometimes we are allowed by the state or federal government to send the reports in electronically. Sometimes we're required to make sure that it's a paper report generated, because it has to have an original signature on it as opposed to just an electronic signature. So it will vary on the report. The student accounting system, now called Nessus, is basically done all electronically at this point. And one of the reasons that we went to the group meeting with everything up electronically was that we could then take that report, use that information, forward it electronically, as opposed to having 29 million pieces of paper, have that come down to the district office, and then have us pull out the salient points and put that in electronic, certain components of it electronically to file with the state. So to the extent possible, wherever we can do something on an electronic basis, we've been doing that. So over the years, we've cut back significantly on the amount of paper generation for these reports. What it really does do is take up significant amounts of time. And if I remember correctly, well, I don't even have to remember.
Well, Nessus is 3,300 hours.
What we calculated. Now, keep in mind, this is combined time, so this would be our faculty and staff in the buildings, plus the district office and administrators. The Nessus reports, being able to compile all the information, generate all the information, we estimated at 3,300 hours a year. Medicaid, we estimated at $3,412 hours per year. Now, the Medicaid, by generating that, what we figure, I took a number just so I would have it. I figured $25 an hour, which is probably very low. And by the number of hours that we do Medicaid, so that comes to about $85,300 to generate those reports, but in turn, we get back $200,000. So I'm looking at that as we're walking away with money in our hand. The SPEDUS stuff helps us with our federal grant, our IDEA grant, and catastrophic aid. So to a degree, that's a money generator. But when you look at between those two, I'm looking at almost 7,000 hours of time over the course of a school year over the course of a year to generate those reports. So we're trying to do it as efficiently as possible.
Now, the reports you generate for the federal government, the ones that are electronic,
Yes.
does another town in New Hampshire, do they use the same system, or another state, do they use the same system, or is everybody buying software and doing this themselves?
The state purchased the software called Nessus. That's the stuff that we have to dump all our information into. So they provided the software, we then generate the data that goes into the Nessus system. The older system used to be called SPEDUS. They phased that out, or they kind of dumped it out in bits and pieces, I guess, for lack of a better term.
All at once.
In the past year. So we're not paying for that system. That's a requirement by the state that all our information goes into Nessus, which the state also in turn uses to justify their IDEA money and their data. So it's not like we have a continuing cost as far as software is concerned. Each state does it differently.
Right.
Right? So Iowa and Illinois may have a different software system that they have their states use. Or there may not, in fact, be a state software system where that data goes into, and then each school district will send in either a paper report or electronic report covering the various components that they have to report back on, and then it's generated in some fashion at the state level.
If you can just ballpark for me, what do you think the cost is of reporting for a special ed teacher or any person in your department there? What do you think is the percentage of their salary devoted to paper?
Oh, wow.
Now, when you say reporting, do you also mean in terms of following sort of some of the paperwork requirements, the
Well, you
the
indicated
mandated processes?
You indicated you gotta, to some extent, you have to do handwritten reports, and I guess that's to generate an individual plan and a record of progress for the individual.
Now, I'll let the SPED directors correct me on this, but if I were to take a guess, just based on experience, that if I took, on average, and keeping in mind that it's going to vary from person to person, I would say a good 25% of their job involves paperwork or record keeping or the development of records.
Yeah, I would agree.
Then on top of that, I would say there's another percentage that you'd have to add on that involves time spent in meetings, IEP meetings, placement meetings, and so forth. So if you took a special ed teacher and many of them do this work before school and after school, if you took their job in total, I would say a good 25% of their time is devoted to development of records, data keeping, submission of records and data. And I would say for the building special ed coordinators, for Kim, for Brian, that percentage is probably higher when you add, especially when you add in meetings that they have to go to, IEP meetings, placement meetings, hearings, due process. So what you're probably looking at, if you took all the money we're spending on special ed staff, you could say a good 25 to 30% is probably time spent on records, development of data, IEPs, placement, record keeping, and the whole 9 yards.
And at the end of the day, what our staff want is they want to work with kids. So, unfortunately, we have to comply with all the state reporting requirements, but our staff want to be in classrooms working with kids. So they do the majority of this work before school, after school, like Nate said, at night, so it is very time-consuming.
Reporting requirements still on your responsibility for out-of-district students, or is that,
Yes.
Yes.
how do you do that if they're out of district?
Well, we're responsible for all of the data entry of that NESA system that Nate was talking about, so all of that would be information that we would have to submit. If we're looking at Medicaid reimbursement, all of that, the district has to oversee it. Sometimes some of the schools will do, chunks of the paperwork and send it to us, but at the end of the day, we're responsible for the information.
The other part, Tom, is we also do site visits. So, for instance, Kim will go to the out-of-district schools and do site visits, spend time at the school, observe, and so forth. So we have that responsibility because one, obviously, we're paying for it, and two, we want to ensure that the youngster is getting the program services that people are claiming they're getting, and they're getting an appropriate level of service.
Is it similar to, basically, they're really in, at least, I guess theoretically, they're really in the Londonderry system? It's
Yes.
just that they're in a
Correct.
That's right.
Absolutely
satellite
correct.
in another town? Okay.
Absolutely correct.
That's fine.
Any other questions from the Budget Committee? Seeing none, any other questions from the audience? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next.
Next up, we have Mr. Blunt. Or do you want to go? Would you like to yield your time to Dr. Ballard? Okay,
Hey, we got a karaoke machine up here.
right. Susan, and as soon as Susan finishes, we'll go to the schools. Is that okay with you, Mark?
Last year, she was going to bring.
Okay, we'll see where we are.
Never did.
Okay, done. It was a good presentation.
I know.
Library. Yes, sir.
Nothing to do with anything except people talking. The first three people, Brian, Kim, and Nate, were talking into the microphone. But when Brian turned to talk to you, he was not talking to the microphone, so the lady and the person in there, whoever it is, had to keep adjusting. When Ron talked to Brian, you weren't even talking into the microphone. So, and Steve, even worse. And Mike had his hand in front of the microphone. So he either deliberately didn't want anyone to hear it or whatever. But it's rather important that you're about this far away from the microphone and talking into it, or if you're going to talk this way, take the microphone with you. I mean, on the rare occasion that I stay at home and watch this, I can't hear some of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed.
Thank you, Reed. Okay, Sue,
Susan?
talk
Okay,
into the microphone.
I am. We're talking into the microphone. If I were going to give my budget presentation a title, I would call it Bigfoot, a Tree Octopus, the Failure of the Velcro Cop, and the Karaoke Machine. And perhaps before I finish my presentation tonight, I will explain that. But for the time being, if you will turn to page 435 of your budget book, you will find the budget overview and executive summary for the Library Media and Technology Program. And for the benefit of people who are not turning to page 435 of the budget book or at home watching, the Library Media and Technology Program encompasses the school library media programs, the elementary computer ed programs, the middle school computer education program, the curriculum lab there and pod support, the high school computer education program in terms of the curriculum lab and tech-rich classroom support, professional development for technology integration, web, video, and radio support. And in our budget executive summary and overview, we note that the major services and responsibility areas in this are to provide intellectual and physical access to the library media centers and technology resources, to provide information literacy, research, and technology skills developed through assured learning experiences, individual instruction and guidance in the use of materials, including emerging technologies, online and electronic resources and research assistance, lifelong appreciation of learning promoted through reading, viewing, and listening, collaboration with teachers to plan, develop, implement, and evaluate instructional units, shared responsibility for the integration of information literacy skills, research, and technology skills within the curriculum, partnership with school administrators to effectively articulate and implement program goals and objectives, selection of materials and resources to align with curriculum objectives, training of faculty and staff in the effective use of resources and technology, and coordination and distribution of a variety of technology and audiovisual resources. The next part of the executive summary provides an alignment of our program to the strategic plan, goals and objectives and activities, and there are a number of areas in which we are involved. In particular, our focus is in curriculum instruction and assessment, and as I previously indicated, one of our major responsibilities is instructional, to make sure that our students are information literate and technology literate. This year, as it happens, both the professional associations that have oversight in those areas at the national level have released revised standards. The International Society for Technology in Education has released the new National Educational Technology Standards for Students, and recently, the American Association of School Librarians has released 21st Century Learner Standards. And so we will be reviewing our benchmarks and whatnot throughout the next year to look at our program and make sure that we line up well with those standards. I would like to say that the community of Londonderry had input into those standards, particularly into the 21st Century Learner Standards. As drafts of the document were released on a regular basis, we communicated with the national organization and said, this is not going to work in our community. If we can't understand and articulate what you're talking about to the people that we work for, it will be very difficult. So I'd just like to say thank you for making us accountable at the local level so that we could provide information at the national level that encourage people to put the new learning standards into readable language. I think people will understand them and appreciate them, and I think our students and teachers will be well served by them. We also get involved with distance education at the schools, and those bring some really remarkable learning experiences to our students. We also develop technology initiatives through the Technology Committee, most of which will be discussed with you later when the IT and Central Computer Services budgets are presented, and the lease budget, because many of those items are there, but I will touch upon those briefly. We continue to focus as a district on ethical use of information, and as the superintendent mentioned, we have just updated and republished our copyright handbook on the web. We deal with acceptable use policies for the use of technology resources. We try and educate the community regarding the same. We provide a lot of staff support and training in terms of integrating technology and information literacy into instructional units. Professional development, we continue to work with Rutgers University on an action research model that has produced a lot of great results, and as you know, we are presently enhancing that model to bridge it out to our students. We are also responsible for teacher web pages, and I think our teachers have done a terrific job in using those as a great vehicle to communicate with parents and keep them informed of what's happening in schools. We certainly get a lot of value from Teachers Academy, which is our in-house professional development institute for providing technology training, and our numbers and our results continue to grow. We support high school technology-rich classrooms, and those have produced some wonderful results for our students. This year in particular, we have been focused in on ensuring that special educators and special ed assistants are also learning more about how to make sure that their students have access to the curriculum through some of the resources we provide. So we've done a lot of focus in on that this year. We continue to try and expand our web resources, making sure that we have appropriate information there for the community. We have implemented this year an underwriting policy for our LEO services, LEO standing for Londonderry Educational Outreach, which includes our website, the Insider Press, which is published quarterly, WLLOLP, our low-power FM station, and LEO 21. We, as with our colleagues, are trying to enhance the use of email within and without the district to communicate and collaborate and to go green. And as we developed our budget, we tried to be very mindful of the current lay of the land. But nonetheless, when you want to make some bricks, you got to get some straw. So we tried to make sure that we asked for things that were appropriate, and we subjected them to a stringent set of criteria. Again, we looked at our school district's strategic plan and school board policies in developing the budget. We looked at the new national guidelines as well as state requirements. We looked at our budget history, tried to see where can we make economies and where do we need to make some progress. We made adjustments based on enrollment figures. We tried to look at all the documentation that we carry out throughout the year to make sure that if we were asking for something, it was truly justified. And again, those who contributed to the development of this budget, which includes the school library media specialists, our technology trainer integrationists, and many teacher colleagues and administrators, we asked that they tell us what their priorities and needs were. In terms of major budget impacts, I would say that one of the areas that has been very much an impact for us the past year is the consideration for SPED software and assistive adaptive needs. We have ongoing costs within our budget to upgrade software, to renew licensing for critical programs across the district. We have seen an increase in repair costs for aging and failing equipment, and so that has been taken into consideration. And we've had adjustments for the fact that there is lower enrollment at the elementary level. In terms of cost avoidances that we feel pretty good about, we have eliminated a full-time computer ed assistant position at Londonderry Middle School. We reduced the number of computer ed assistant hours at all elementary schools by 3 hours per day. We have just published, as I mentioned, our copyright manual, which is now online versus in print form. We're very happy that the Londonderry Leach Library is, through the auspices of the State Library, able to subscribe to the Overdrive Audiobooks program, because when we costed it out, it would have been $12,000 for us. And it's a very valuable program for us to ensure access to curriculum resources for SPED and 504 students. We utilize email, as I mentioned before, to try and not produce as much paper and to be a little more efficient in terms of operation. And we have begun really trying to use our internal or intranet website for the distribution of information and notices and various survey instruments. As Nate mentioned, we are also required on an annual basis to conduct a variety of surveys for the state of New Hampshire, and we've tried to become a little more efficient by doing this on the web, but it still takes a lot of time. We have also formed partnerships with our PTAs and PTO and Friends of Music through Leo to acquire DVD duplication, which was a cost avoidance to the operating budget. And Leo has begun programming sales and underwriting and sponsorships, and we're really starting to see some growth in that area in terms of bringing in a funding mechanism to sustain those operations. In terms of our budget priorities, we have 4 particular areas. It's critical that we maintain our teaching and learning resources. We are in the inquiry business, and that's where the bulk of our requests lie. Also, as I mentioned, we are responsible for providing technology resources, audiovisual resources, and again, you will hear more about that when Sean comes up to talk about the IT budget and when Peter addresses our lease. But this is an area of great concern to us, again, especially replacement of items that are failing. And one other area that we know we have to look at critically this year, and there is a technology initiative that will be discussed, is, and this is in regard to the impending change from from analog to digital TV, and how digital signal, how we can address that in the schools. So we are looking and investigating that in the most prudent way possible, and an initiative will be forthcoming in that area. Another critical area for us is to make sure that our staff are effective and efficient in the classroom, so professional development continues to be an important area for us, and we want to continue to do the job that we've been doing through Teachers Academy, as well as to continue to expand opportunities for teachers with the use of their web pages. And in terms of personnel, which the superintendent reviewed with you, again, the most important resource I guess we have in our schools go home every night to their families. People are what make our program so vital, and without the great people that I have the pleasure to work with, I don't think we could do the job that we do. But we try and look and make sure that we are operating efficiently, and we do make sure that we collapse or reallocate human resources when necessary. You have in the budget book, beginning on page 441 and going through to page 400 and, make sure I've got the right, 96, a variety of performance indicators that we have provided. These are statistics and information about our school library media programs, about our curriculum labs at the middle school and at the high school, as well as some information about Teachers Academy that indicate that we're a very successful franchise. We have a lot of customers. I think I mentioned to you last year, we are a program that serves 100% of the population, students and teachers, and we're very happy and privileged to do so. That's the extent of my overview. I do know that in terms of what we have requested this year, I believe that we are under our requests from last year. Again, that has to do a lot with collapsing some items, some personnel, and with making some adjustments at the elementary schools based on enrollments. And as regards my previous mention of what I would title my presentation, if I would be able to give it a title, can you remember what I titled it? I want to see if you were listening.
An octopus and a karaoke machine.
Thank you. Bigfoot, a tree octopus, the failure of the California Velcro crop, and the karaoke machine. I wanted to use these because I think it's important for people to understand that the world of information, I know everybody thinks everything is available on the web, but I know as a person, a professional in information land, or in informatics, as people would call it, that the web that you know is only about 20% of what exists digitally and is available. And the 80% of the deep web or hidden web is subscription-based, and people have to pay to get at it because it is vetted information. It has gone through an editorial process, and it is considered the cream of the crop. A lot of what we find on the World Wide Web, though valuable, and I am a World Wide Web user and a Google user too, but I can tell you that over 1,000 sites exist on Bigfoot that purport that Bigfoot is as real as anyone in this room. Now, I live with a person who, when I go home tonight, I hope doesn't say to me, there's a Bigfoot special on, because I'll be watching it, who is fascinated by Bigfoot, and my husband would like nothing more than for someone to prove that Bigfoot exists. But thus far, we don't think he does, but there are over 1,000 sites that are so well done that you would think Bigfoot could walk in here at any minute. As somebody who wants our kids to think critically and to understand information and to understand when they are being persuaded to something that may or not be true, that concerns me. And as for the tree octopus, there is a website that we show our kids all the time about the Northwest tree octopus, an endangered species. And were you to visit this website, you would believe in the Northwest tree octopus, but it is a bogus site. It is simply someone's invention and meant to amuse, but kids think it's real. And as for the failure of the California Velcro crop, well, there's another website out there. And again, one would think that the economy of California was really in bad trouble because this year's Velcro crop has failed. Again, these resources, some of them, again, meant to be funny, just like things on YouTube are meant to be funny, we can laugh at. But there's a lot more out there that is designed to be misinformation and disinformation, and what's even worse, malinformation, intended to harm our kids, intended to dupe our kids, and that concerns me. So that's why I think kids need school libraries, school librarians, good technology educators, and wonderful teachers to make sure that they get the critical thinking skills and the basic skills of reading and thinking and computation to make sure that they understand that there's stuff to worry about out there. So, and as for the karaoke machine, yes, I was the administrator who got the request for the karaoke machine, and probably the first person to go, "What?" and to pick up the phone and call the middle school and say, "What are you talking about?" Thereafter, though, when I got off the phone and they gave me their story, I said, okay, I'll keep the karaoke machine in. I wished I could think of another name for it, but I couldn't. And I thought, well, I'll just leave it in there and see what happens. And I wish you could have been with me during my first run-through of my budget with the superintendent, when the business administrator, who is not known for having a real smiley face all the time, sat bemused and just couldn't wait for Nate to hit that item. And the superintendent, when he's looking at our,
He's doing that
he is scanning and he is looking for stuff. He wants stuff. And the karaoke machine, and literally leapt out of his seat. And this amused the business administrator. It made his day. But at any rate, after I explained to him why I had left the karaoke machine in, he let it stand for the day. But he did call the music director and speak with him, and he did call the middle school and speak with them. And I can just tell you this, originally Londonderry Middle School, some generous soul gave them a karaoke machine. And as Andy explained to you the other evening, what that has done for kids' confidence levels in terms of public performance, in terms of their interest in music, has been remarkable. So they really feel that that karaoke machine pulls its weight instructionally, and they've got me convinced too. So I did leave the karaoke machine in, and I hope you will give it every due consideration. Despite its name and probably image, I think it's going to be continue to be a very effective instructional resource. And now I'd be happy to answer any questions,
Questions from the board?
hoping that the karaoke machine might be the one.
I have one.
Go ahead.
Sue, I don't mean to be redundant, in asking questions from year to year to year, but this is one I always, I'm a believer in hard copy books.
Me too.
And I believe in the budget, you have $11,000. Ben will tell you I believe in condensed version books, which is also true, but
You believe in condensed version books?
I
too?
do. But $11,000, is that sufficient for our numerous libraries to keep us in?
Well, I wish you hadn't asked that question, because I have to tell you, there's more than $11,000 in
Oh,
there for
maybe I'm
books.
looking at the wrong
Yeah.
line. I'm on page 503.
Okay. Yes, as you go down that page, Dan, first you come to Moose Hill, and you can see that we're asking for $2,500
Right.
for books there. 11,000 at Matthew Thornton, $8,270 for books at North School, and
What does, well,
8214 at South, 19,500 at the middle school, and 13,700 at the high school, but they also, because they have a huge reference book budget, so
what
there's
does,
12,000
let's
there.
stay on the 11,000
Sure.
at Matthew Thornton.
That
What
would be Matthew Thornton.
What does 11,000 buy us, and how do we determine a book budget per school?
Well, as it so happens, if I can put my hands on it, $11,000 depends on what we're buying.
Or any number, but, yeah.
The average price for all titles, grade, preschool to grade 4, right, this is from a School Library Journal, is about $19 a title. And for grade 5 and up, fiction is $18, and nonfiction about $27. So $11,000,
Gets us 300, 400, 500 books.
that's correct. And what our school library media specialists do on an annual basis, we only have so many feet
Right.
of shelf, so that they review the collection. They look at the collection, they withdraw outdated materials. I think I've used this example before. We don't want asbestos as our friend on the shelf anymore. So we look for things that we know.
We want
Information
PCPs as
changes,
our friend,
things
right.
change, and we want to make sure we're giving kids good information.
Right.
They also, the curriculum drives the development of the collection a lot of times. So if there's been a slight shift in curriculum, we may have to emphasize an area we have not previously emphasized before. Our collection is really more of a special collection because it is so closely tied into the curriculum. In terms of the elementary schools, we also are trying to cultivate the lifelong love of reading. So we have a lot more fiction at the elementary schools, encouraging our kids to take the books out, encourage our teachers read to them, our library staff read to them. We have celebrity readers come. We want to make sure we have a very print-rich environment, because we have over 100 years of research that tell us that the greatest predictor for building a reader is free voluntary reading. The books that kids choose to read themselves. So we want to cultivate that. So our collections are about the size we need them to be to service. What we are doing is replacing, adding new titles, because kids get excited when they hear a book is coming out. You can imagine, you all are familiar with the Harry Potter series, and you know our kids, when that was coming out, were really anxious to have copies, and we might get multiple copies of very popular things. Also, books wear out, especially the popular stuff, so we're constantly replacing those types of items.
What do we do with the asbestos is our friend books, the ones we take out of circulation?
Well, especially with an asbestos is our friend book, we go
Wow.
through a discard process, and we either
Do we
try
donate
to,
them? Or?
we either try to repurpose the book, and I think we discussed.
What writing it isn't?
Right. The information in this book could be hazardous. Well, for example, if we were going to send out, say we replaced a multi-volume encyclopedia set in the library, a teacher might say, gee, I'd like to have that in my classroom, but sometimes the information is outdated. So we have been known to put a little sticker in the front that says, the information on population but historical information is still accurate. Those, if we could repurpose it, we would. Often, we've been dealing with a firm called Bridges to Learning that sends containers overseas to Afghanistan, to Africa, to third
Great.
world countries. Now, we don't want them to think asbestos
Oh.
is our friend either, but so in those instances, we might just remove that book and pitch it.
I understand.
What we can.
But what we try to do, those that are more consumer friendly, we
That's
try to
repurpose.
make others.
And we have been working
Able,
with the
okay.
Solid Waste Advisory Committee to get got books in town. There's been a little glitch there, but we're still hoping to have that. And if not, they're coming to pick up some containers from us so that
Right.
we can recycle those
Okay.
materials.
Thank you very much.
George, since I guess it's safe to assume we don't subscribe to Bigfoot Monthly.
Is there such probably is. I'm surprised I'm surprised it's not on my husband's Christmas list.
It's gonna be coming into your house, clandestinely in a brown paper wrapper.
That and lion and hyena shows, if they're on, I'm watching it.
Just doing some real quick rough math with Ron here. Looks like we spend about 60, I happen to agree with Dan, being able to touch and feel.
Oh, absolutely.
Is a good thing, but we spend probably, or this year, we're looking for about $63,000, which is about 25% of your budget. So I think that's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
It's not, there's no, it's just not, that's what you should be doing, I guess is the point.
We know that a lot of resources, we've had to move. They're only available to us through web-based subscription in many instances. And in particular, a lot of government resources that used to be in government depository libraries, we used to be able to get some of that material. Can't get it that way anymore. You have to be connected.
Yeah, no, I think there's a balance, don't
There
get me
is a
wrong.
balance,
I think
yep.
there's a balance that we can strike, but
Right.
I still like the,
I couldn't agree with you. There's nothing more,
Book in
to
front of
me,
me.
the most beautiful sight in the world is seeing a kid engaged with a book, and you can just tell the mind is working.
just don't change too many of them in the elementary school, because I like going in there and finding the same book every year for the celebrity to
They're
read it, because
classics.
then I can just keep
They're
going.
classics.
And actually, if I could, just one question. Do you guys know off the top of your heads what the public library spends on books every year? Have you seen that yet this year or not? I don't know. 100. Okay. Okay, so it's about 138, 128?
Yeah.
Okay.
As I said, the average book prices, and book prices go up when oil prices go up too, because of ink and paper and production costs and the whole thing. So sometimes they spike very high. I'm very concerned about what they're going to do given the current situation.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none from Budget Committee? Go ahead, Mike. Oh, I'm sorry, John.
The friendly Adam? I don't know.
Sue, you mentioned
Yeah.
you were able to reduce one full-time computer assistant.
Yes.
Was that through someone retiring and you just didn't replace, or?
Yes, someone transferred into a different position in the school, and at the time we chose, it was during the school, toward the end of halfway through the school year last year. So we said, let's see how we make it through to the end of the year without this position. We talked to the remaining computer ed assistant and the library staff, and they kind of worked out a way of supporting one another, and we were able to make it. We thought, let's not fill it for the coming year. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the Budget Committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you guys mind, Mark, would you mind if we had the high school go, because we've got a number of people, all right?
Oops.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Mark. Sue, good job.
Thanks. Did I drop something?
No, Jim tripped.
Okay.
What'd you say? I said you tripped.
Good evening. If I had to entitle my budget presentation, I guess I would entitle it brief.
For the last hurrah.
In an effort to save paper, my presentation is one page. I think it should be in front of you. This year, it's a presentation, or at least a budget developed by both Jay and I. When you develop a budget, at least at the high school, you get most of your input from your teaching staff. Most of that is filtered through the two curriculum coordinators who are back there, Kim and Diane, and they do an excellent job. First of all, the high school budget pages 109 to 144. And last year's, believe it or not, at the high school with 1,800 or so kids, it seems like it's a big school and has a lot of money, but actually the control from the principal or from the school, the amount of money is pretty small, looking at the whole thing, because it doesn't count personnel, it doesn't count a lot of the curriculum things that Mark has. So last year's total budget was $564,423. This year's request is up to $616,416, which is an increase of $51,993. The enrollment at the high school for about the last 3 years have pretty much stayed the same. We're projecting about 1,820 kids, and that's a flat line projection, just taking the kids from 8th grade through 11th grade, moving them up a year. That's not using any enrollment increases. So that's the number that we based our budget upon. The 51,000 basically can be seen, and I just try to highlight the major areas that there might have been some increases. One is vocational high school tuition. We're proud to say that as one of our initiatives and goals is to increase vocational opportunities for students. We go from 130 to 145 students that will be attending Manchester and Alvern. And also the tuition for Manchester and Alvern has gone up a little bit. And I believe right now we pay for next year, $710 for Manchester, $690 for Alvern, which is up just $20 and $10 for those kids for this year. Also, there will be an increase in the high school conference and mileage, and most of that is due to projecting the training of AP courses. Basically, if we're going to teach an AP course, even if it's one that we already have, if it's a new teacher, or if we're doing an additional course, in order to have that count as a advanced placement course, and for the kids to get the college credit, the teacher has to go through an extensive training because the course has to be the same for every single high school in the state or in the country, so the kids can be equalized when they go to college opportunities. So we're projecting about 3 different trainings, and that could be through either staff turnover, increase in enrollment, so another teacher would have to teach it, or possible, we're thinking about the possibility of adding another AP course for next year. And if we do that, it'll be presented at the Program of Studies time. Next thing is general supplies. That's up about $6,700. It's really not up from my request from last year. Last year, during the budget process, at the very end of the budget process, when we were trying to get to that number below default and a little more, superintendent graciously removed about $6,700 from that line account. But what we do is we look to budget about $35 a student. And this is all the supplies, from papers to pencils to scissors to everything that you can think of. So if you said to a kid, you have to bring your own paper and hand it to the teacher so she can run the test off for you, or a worksheet off for you, and all that other stuff, really, if you look at it, it's about $35 a kid for the whole year. Which really, when you look at it as per student, is not a great deal. We do a much better job. If we sent the parents out to get all that stuff, and I know parents already do, I'm sure they'd be spending a lot more than $35 going and getting their own reams of paper to do that. What we're doing is, and if you look at the budget line items from the last few years, those accounts were overspent every time they were cut down, so that $35 a student is a fair number to budget. The other thing is adult ed, purchasing service. We are asking next year for the budget to support about $2,500 in the Camp Dakota field trip. We've run that camp 3 years, and these are for the at-risk kids that I always come and get approval for. Sometime in September, we send them in October. And we're finding that the kids that we're sending, since they are at-risk kids, are having difficulty coming up with their share of the tuition, so we tend to fund them. And we really have found that it's so successful for these kids that we don't want kids to be denied to go, and we haven't denied any kids. We somehow come up with the money through begging people and other donations, but we felt that if we can at about $2,500 put towards that, that would lessen the burden of any fundraising that they might have to do, and also get those kids to Camp Dakota. So that was a small amount that we looked to increase. That wasn't an increase. That has been totally funded previously by either students or fundraising. The other thing that we have a new thing, $2,800 in there, because in 2010, and you'll say, well, we're pretty far away from that, the high school goes through its accreditation process. Hopefully we'll get another 10-year approval like we did 7 years ago, but we have been told by NEAS that we need to budget $2,800 for the pre-surveys and all the stuff that we have to start working on next school year in preparation for the upcoming 2010 accreditation. And I'm sure that number is going to go up the closer we get to the school year of 2010. The other area is the printing area. What we actually did was look at the exact cost that it takes to print the things that we send out to the printers: student parent handbook, teacher handbook, program of studies, emergency manuals, and the literacy calendars. And we got commitments from the printers and to try and find the exact cost for next year. And that total increase will be $2,310. The rest of the increases are little increases here and there. So basically, that brings us to the bottom line of about $51,000 increase in the high school budget. This budget will support current programming and in all curriculum areas and maintain all current pathways, AP courses, and adult education offerings. It will also allow us to take small steps ahead on equipment replacement plan and updating textbooks and software where necessary, and you'll see that when Mark does his presentation. We should all be proud of the accomplishments of Londonderry High School. Past budgets and this proposed budget has assisted us in achieving a 1% dropout rate, 86% of our graduating students attending post-secondary education, a decrease in disciplinary actions, truancy, vandalism, and additional programs for our at-risk vocational, special education, honor, and advanced placement students. I want to thank you for your support in the past and your anticipated support in the future, and I will be willing to answer any questions.
Questions from the school board? Seeing none. Budget committee?
Just one quick one on the printing. It kind of goes back to what Nate said in terms of, I guess, an email distribution process where parents or whoever could kind of opt in to not get paper. Would any of these things, Jim, that you mentioned fall into that category, or are these things that we are required to print for certain activities?
Well, actually, one thing, Will, and Jason and I were, actually, when you brought it up, and I think we can cut $600 out of that account. I was going to bring it up to the superintendent. Jason and I were talking back there. First of all, most of them, the student parent handbook, which is the most expensive, at the high school, it's also their homework assignment notebook.
Okay. Yep.
So it's not like it's just a handbook. It's combined, and that is such an important thing for these kids.
I recall reading that now. You're right.
And that's a real big
Yep.
thing. The emergency manuals, we have to. The program of studies is like a course catalog that you have to. The literacy thing. The other one, though, is the faculty handbook. And as we were talking, I was saying maybe what we should do next year, and we have it online, but what I think we're going to do next year, and we'll probably can cut $600 out of that, is to just print it for new teachers and have the teachers that have been with us just get it offline. So that could be a savings. That's something that we can do. And other than that, all the others are pretty much required.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions from the budget committee? Board last time? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, it's karaoke Corey.
You notice I was smart enough not to have it in my budget. You learned something over the years.
DJ Andy.
Okay.
I provided the Budget Committee and board members with the handout. It says on the top, LMS budget presentation. This year, we are proposing a budget of $284,750, which is a reduction of $5,492 from last year's budget. The next piece is the enrollment. As everybody knows, our enrollment is going down. We're looking at an average size of approximately 21 students at all three grade levels. One of the difficulties we run into, though, if a child is taking, say, French and algebra, you all of a sudden trying to work those into the schedule, have a class maybe 27, 28. So there are some classes that you'll see in the range of 17 and 18, and there are some classes that will still approach 30. In the assistant superintendent's budget, we have two major items. One is $15,000 for science. This is year 2 of the science program that we started last year. We budgeted $15,000 last year and $15,000 this year, and that will fulfill that initiative. Also, we have a line item in this assistant superintendent's budget for $20,000 for reading language arts. It's a program that we presently have a committee looking at. We'll be coming to the board in the spring with recommendations, but we put that item in so we could move forward if we find something that is satisfactory. In the family and consumer science, you'll see increases in the supply line because the grocery purchases are going up, as we're all seeing at home as well. We are also requesting in the equipment account 10 new sewing machines. These machines were bought in 1998, and they are in constant need of repair, and it's starting to affect classes because of having the proper number of machines ready. We are also requesting in the equipment line replacement for 10 microscopes. I'd like to thank the science teachers because they all went out and took a repair course so that they're able to maintain our equipment on site unless there's a major problem. They did that on their own, and I really want to thank them. And we also have some cabinets in there so we can store the microscopes properly and hopefully increase their useful life. In the lease, we have 10 whiteboards. These boards would finish off the first floor of the 8th grade wing, and that would mean that every classroom in the middle school now has a whiteboard in the room, which is in many cases very important because we have a number of students who come in with allergies now, and the chalk simply doesn't work, so this gives the teacher that option. In social studies, we have included the purchase of 25 replacement texts for grade 7. We have budgeted to replace our world atlases for each 7th grade team. That's one class set and a teacher's edition. The present atlases are a 1998 copyright, and we are proposing to buy a 2006 version. The line item for language arts and reading is an increase because we are purchasing vocabulary word books for all students now as a result of some of the data that we received from our Iowa testing. In Mr. Zappler's budget, you will see some suggested maintenance projects needed for LMS. I'd like to thank Bob Blanchett and his crew because they do an outstanding job every day on the facility. The critical needs in terms of space, we've talked about a number of times. The first one is a appropriate bathroom and changing facility for many of our students. This is an area that we have students who are now in wheelchairs, who require changing tables, who in some cases require feeding assistance, and we need some place that is a very private spot for them to accomplish these tasks. We're also looking at the addition of the Friends 3 program, and working with Chuck, we are looking at a combination of our Friends 3 and Basic Academic Skills program in some combination of rooms so that we can get the children who are in our Basic Academic Skill programs off the second floor. Right now, we have 5 evacuation plans with the fire department for the 5 students who are in that program on the second floor. We'd like to get them down to the first floor and take that away. Our PFS program is for the emotionally handicapped children. In 05-06, we had 13 students. This year, we have 30, and that will stay constant next year. I'd like to commend Brian and his staff. Over the last couple of years, we've been able to transition 3 students from out-of-district placement into that PFS program in the building. That goes well because of all their efforts. I wanted to highlight a couple of the programs that we've made changes in. One was the Brown Center a couple of years ago. It's now in its 3rd year. I would say that talking to parents, it's been received favorably. This is a program which parents pay for. It comes out of their own pockets. We are presently holding all the sessions at LMS, which allows us to gather 100% of our students in the sessions. It also allowed us to eliminate transportation costs and maintain a reasonable fee for the program. We're looking at about an $85 fee was what it cost parents this year. We presently have a committee together that is looking at the potential for eliminating the UNH staff. Our PE department, our health teachers, and our 6th grade teams believe that they can probably pull this off with our own staff, and thus we'll either be able to maintain or even lower that fee to parents again. Over the past 3 years, the middle school has also been working with the More Than Words program. This year we held it at LMS. Our attendance rate was the same as last year, which is 62%. We're not thrilled with that number of students, but we are seeing an increase in both parents attending. Last year, in discussing this with the board, we were looking at some way that we could hopefully get the message across to all students. So what we added this year was an in-school assembly that all 7th graders went to before the day ended. So we could at least say that every single child had one component of that. It was very interesting, though, because we had about 30 parents show up at the door because their children went home from the featured speaker so excited about what it was about. So we're going to continue that next year, and we hope to find maybe some other ways of doing some more things in the school, because I agree with Dan from last year. It's very important that we get the message to all the students. It's just trying to get all the parents to truly understand what the program brings to the table. And then to sum up, over the past 3 years, the middle school has increased instructional time for all students. We have provided students with accelerated opportunities in math and reading. We have developed multiple levels of services for our struggling readers. We have increased our number of academies to offer both enrichment and support for students. We continue to provide programs like the Brown Center and More Than Words. We changed our administrative structure 2 years ago to allow us to focus more on curriculum instruction. We reduced our clerical support by 1 full-time position last year. We reduced our computer ed staff by 1 full-time position last year. We have recommended in this year's budget the reduction of 1 physical education teacher. We have shown improvement on both our state and local tests, and we have been able to do this while reducing our budget by $31,054 since 04-05. I also wanted to highlight that in 04-05, our enrollment was 1,371. We are projecting next year 1,243. just so the board is aware, we've seen a trend of our enrollment going up over the last 4 years during the summer of 13 students. So it's almost a section, which means that we had a decrease of 128 students, or 9.34%. Our budget in 04-05 was $315,804. We're proposing a budget of $284,750, which is a $31,054 decrease, or a 9.83% decrease. So basically, as we've lowered our enrollment, we have lowered our costs at the middle school. And I'd like to put it out there to any questions.
Questions? Dan?
Andy, what was our scholarships awarded last year for Brown Center and DC trip? And scholarship's probably a bad word. It's based on need.
Right. We are seeing an increase in both those areas. We have offered for the last couple of years a fundraising opportunity for the Washington trip. And many students have taken that, us up on that effort. We work with the New Hampshire To-Do magazine, and they give them 50% of any subscription. And I would say a lot of students have reduced that trip cost by about $100 to $150 if they've tried to do that. It's trying to convince them that maybe mom and dad could use the assistance. So many times they just think mom and dad can just continually write the check, so it's educating the child. The Brown Center, we continue to pretty much go through the allotted scholarships. There is enough there, but we are pretty much spending it because, again, part of that scholarship was looking at the student needs, their transportation needs, and a number of things like that. So the only increase we've had in those lines actually was to more than words. And I think we're getting to the point with it being in-house and using district staff. I mean, I must commend the people we work with. We have people from the high school, the elementary schools, guidance counselors, a lot of internal staff that now it's a night function who come over and spend the evening with us and do it just for the sake of the kids and aren't looking for any financial gain from it.
So I guess my question is, this is a placeholder. We're still not going to turn any kids away based on hardship.
No, we
Right.
we
We'll
find
come
the
up
money.
with the money someplace.
And I will also tell you that we put out a letter
Right.
to the community, and it's amazing the number of parents who send us a check
Right.
to make sure that no child does not go. I mean, there is one family out there this year that has sponsored 2 other children to go, and that's just the community we live in.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, Budget Committee, John?
Just on the subject of the Brown Center, having had 2 kids go through the Sergeant Camp program and one currently involved in the Brown Center thing, I just wonder, do we lose any of the magic of it if the faces running it are familiar people as opposed to strangers coming in from afar?
I think there's a potential that, and that's being discussed by this committee. One of the things we also see, though, is because the faces are not familiar, children aren't as trusting. We do see some gains at the end of the year, but we wonder in that first 6-week session that we get to, all of a sudden you have these strangers. You've just transitioned to a new school. You just barely know your own teachers, and now you've got this new face, and you want me to play games based on trust and teamwork when I don't even know who you are. So it's that debate back and forth.
Interesting point. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Other questions from the Budget Committee?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ron, I'd like to proceed with the elementary people if that's possible. So
course.
if we could have the elementary people come up. Mark, yours is a little bit longer, so we'll probably wind up starting with you on next week, if that's okay, next Thursday. Okay. We're gonna do North and Moose Hill, and then we'll move on to Matthew Thornton and South.
First of all of us should be up here together, but there's not enough mics. And I say that because over the last month or so, all of the schools, North, South, Matthew Thornton, and Moose Hill, worked together to put their budget together. So even though you'll see different amounts in certain items in the budget, everything is based on an equitable goal that we all have. And it's based on the number of students that we have, and the board remembers last year, if our numbers are going down, we have budget items that go down, and if it goes up, then some of our items go up. So, but we're all equitable in terms of each of the items that we have. Just wanted to talk quickly about elementary cost-saving measures. Nate had alluded to that. And in each of the packets that you see, we have listed elementary cost-saving measures. I just want to highlight a couple of them. Our learning materials accounts continue to reflect the offer that Scott Forsman has given us in our new reading program, as well as our math program. We are spending no money this year on language arts workbooks or math workbooks, and that deal goes through 2009. At that time, there will be an increase in the elementary learning materials account, specifically math and language arts, because we will assume that cost. This year, in particular, we are paying for the unit benchmark assessments at a buy one, get one free. So that also is reflected in our budget. In the area of electronic communication, we are using email correspondence with staff whenever possible. Yes, George, myself included in that as well. We also this year have asked for parent email addresses, and we are in the process of getting the data collected there and putting them in our own data system so that we can send out notices to parents and save paper that way. Tom, we had talked about this last year, and your wife Rita in particular has done a great job at North School as head of our Good News Bear, where we also only give out the Good News Bear to families and not necessarily students. So we've saved paper that way, and now it's going to be through electronically. So again, we've taken measures in terms of paper. Also, this year we've created an inventory of textbooks. In terms of reading this year, North School has 100 reading books for first grade students. Next year, our enrollment goes up to 122 students. So in essence, we would have to order an additional 22 reading textbooks at a cost of about $40 a piece. That's close to $1,000. However, in working together with the elementary schools, Mrs. Mack at Matthew Thornton School is reducing the number of first graders at her school. So she's basically going to send over the books that we have that we need. So within house, we are moving materials around, and it's a great way for us to obviously save money in the budget and work together to create that equitable resource again. So I just wanted to kind of point that out to the board. North School is anticipating next year 581 students. That's up from last year's budget of a request of 552 students. We are, at this point, keeping our 26 regular ed classroom teachers in the budget. As Nate talked about the first day, we are a little bit concerned with our fifth grade numbers, and we are going to monitor them throughout the year. If that number gets up into the 130s, then we would shift a teacher over, I believe, from Matthew Thornton over to North School to cover that additional students. Otherwise, in terms of personnel, what I've asked for to accommodate the 126, 127 students that we may have next year, an additional hour for our assistants at the fifth grade level, so a total of 5 additional hours due to the larger class sizes at the fifth grade level. Also, just wanted to point out the discrepancy, I guess, in numbers. In second grade, we have 87 students projected next year. We have 87 students now in first grade. So we're going to go down to 4 teachers from second grade down, up to fifth grade with that number. But on the back end and on the front end of that 87, we have close to 40 students more coming in to first grade next year, and we have 50 students more in the third grade, which means that we will reorganize and can reorganize within our own building and would not have to ask for additional teachers next year unless that fifth grade number again moves up, that we have to add another teacher. The board and the budget committee have the North School building accounts. Our building accounts represent our learning materials account, our supply accounts. All of our learning materials are based on the school district's strategic plan, the goals and objectives for any materials that are necessary for students, and especially in the areas of language arts and mathematics, along with social studies and science. Our budget last year was set at $88,553. This year it's up to $97,240. And again, that's due to the increase in students. Some of the areas, the area of decrease is in the regular ed usage of our copy machine is down $1,568. We do see some increases in the areas listed: regular ed supplies, art supplies, English language arts, regular ed replacement equipment, nursing services, and office of the principal postage. The regular ed English language arts increase is due to the fact that we this year have to pay for half of the unit benchmark costs that we do with our reading program. Every unit, we give unit assessments, and we have to purchase those. Scott Forsman gives us a 2-for-1 deal this year, so it's going to cost us $3,220. That money was originally in Mark's account, but what you're going to see when Mark does his budget is that a lot of the monies from his account is going to go into the individual schools. This is to help us as we get to the next couple of years when we have to fund our own reading program. So it's simply that $3,200 has been moved from Mark's account into the elementary accounts as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions on North School.
Questions from the board? Rich?
Yep.
You requesting an additional hour in the 5th grade.
I am.
What is that hour going to be used for?
Basically, the assistants in 5th grade come in from roughly 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, Ron, to take over for, not necessarily take over, but they help out our teachers during their reading group instruction time. If we have 26 and 27 students in a classroom, those aides would come in at 12 o'clock. And the 12 to 1 o'clock time is generally used for whole group instruction in the area of reading, where the teacher will actually go through the story and deal with the class as a whole. With 27 students, what I'd like to see with that extra hour is to break down that instruction even further and maybe do half the class with the teacher or a third of the class with the aide and 2/3 of the class with the teacher, to just minimize that time that we have, or in terms of the ratio of pupil-teacher ratio down during that hour. So it's still going to be in the area of reading, and it will be 100% utilized for instruction.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the Budget Committee? Okay.
Bonnie?
The Moose Hill School budget is $56,670 for the 2009 school year, which is a decrease of $208. The areas of decrease are for the lease usage copier because of the new lease agreement, and also the Office of Principal Printing based on past history. Areas of increase are regular ed supplies, and I have to say I was very impressed that Jim only spends $35 per student for his, because crayons and markers must cost a whole lot more because our budget is up there. That's always an area that we struggle with, because we do use a lot of construction paper and markers and clay and a lot of the hands-on things. So as those costs increase, obviously it shows up in our budget. So we might have to take something away, I guess. The regular ed replacement equipment is also up based on the wear and tear. We're going into our 8th year, and we're finding we need to replace more and more of the chairs. They take a lot of obviously wear and tear, but I think we've also discovered that it's more because we only have little chairs, and so adults are sitting in them, and it takes more wear and tear. So we need to get some more adult chairs in there, we're finding. And then the Office of Principal postage, we really took a beating in postage this year for the registration packets that get mailed out. And so that will be an area we will look at as far as how can we get registration packets out to people by email possibly, instead of mailing every single packet out, because it is the oversized envelope with a lot in it. It costs us a lot more. Space at Moose Hill, unlike some of the other elementary schools, we are rapidly losing space. You had asked that question before, Steve. Since we opened, we've added a LEAP classroom, we've added the Friends program, we've taken our conference room and turned it into a reading room. We've taken our inclusion room and divided it into 4 teaching areas for our reading teacher, our half-time inclusion teacher, as well as our full-time inclusion teacher, and our speech, to give them another teaching area. We have taken a closet and turned it into an office, and so we're down to really only one classroom at Moose Hill that's used for district training instead of Moose Hill student teaching. So we're running out of space at our school. And also, as we add programs, we're finding the 3-tier model in reading is really, really stretching us to find teaching space as well. So, and overall, the budget looks pretty good, and we do our best to keep it down to a reasonable level. And we cut last year, and we cut again this year. So, any questions?
Questions from the board? Seeing on Budget Committee? John.
Hi, whenever I hear we're running out of space, I start wondering, is there a long-term solution that's needed? Are you anticipating a continuing growth in enrollment? Do you need more classrooms down there? will this be coming up in a few years?
Enrollment is always a question at Moose Hill because we don't know how many kindergartners are out there in the public, in the community. So it's always our best guess. We've projected enrollment for 315, which for kindergarten has stayed fairly steady. I mean, we had one year where it was extremely large. The space issues come with our increasing SPED population for LEAP, for pre-K, the 3 and 4-year-olds. The trends, as Brian said before, it's hard to predict whether pre-K is going to continue to grow the way it has been.
We try to go out a lot sooner, John, and try to look ahead to try to get a handle on how many kids may be coming in by going to the daycares a little bit earlier and what have you. So, you know, we will have ample time to, if there's any issues that come ahead, because we're trying to do that.
I know, I guess by definition, you can't have more than a 3-year planning horizon.
Right.
But I guess I'm just wondering, when you run out of classrooms, what happens then?
That's his job.
Well, I think, give a real short answer. One of the things that we did this summer was develop an elementary space utilization study based on what our best guess was as far as enrollment was concerned in programs and space that we would need, John. And the idea is, in essence, to follow that path. I think at Moose Hill, one of the crunches on space, as has been mentioned, is our special education programming and services that we're offering, as well as the support to the kindergarten too, because it's not just LEAP. We now have in neighborhood, counting federal funds, 1.5 reading people, as well as 1 and change special education people, and it's finding space to have instruction in those places. And so that's the way we're addressing it. My concern long-term on space at the elementary level is providing appropriate instructional space for art, music, PE, as well as special ed programming services, as well as small group instructional spaces too. Because we are now at a point where I guess I'm saying that some of the drop in elementary enrollment, from my perspective, was very positive in that we could reclaim space that for different programs, art, music, special education space, small instructional spaces. So when Matthew Thornton was up, higher enrollment, we had kids receiving instruction on hall landings. We had kids in converted closets. And I think having the space now available to provide, to keep appropriate class size, have the small instructional spaces as well as classroom for ancillary spaces, art, music, and art and music, is a plus for us, and we're getting back to where we should be as far as appropriate instructional space for a variety of programs, in addition to allowing us to have district-wide special education programs that not only provide, as was discussed earlier, as good or if not better educational programming in district, but also in a sense that saves cost, is more cost effective. So, and I'd be happy to give you a copy of that elementary space utilization study. I'd be happy to give it to you before you leave, so I've got an extra copy in my office.
Susie, is that on the website, the utilization program?
I don't.
Can we put it on the website if we spoke about it here so the public can take a look at it?
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Carol and Linda? Ron?
Yes, sir.
After they're finished, we'll call it a night.
Yep.
Okay.
Maybe.
I think you're next. Thank you, Rich, for talking for all of us about our cost-saving measures and the initiatives we're doing in the elementary schools. You have a corrected page for South School that Mary gave to you. It now includes FY09 for the enrollment. Our budget has increased slightly from 107,137 to 114,794. That's a 7% increase, 7,657. This year's enrollment was based on 616 students, and for FY09, it's based on 599 students. The increase come in regular ed supplies, the learning materials, as Rich explained, we are now paying for the unit benchmark tests. In general learning materials, the math workbooks, the cost of the workbooks have gone up. Some in replacement equipment as well as postage. Some of my replacement equipment last year was in the lease, so now it's appearing in my budget, so that's the difference. Some decreases in art supplies, the lease usage copier, which means a new lease agreement, new equipment. Now the we're replacing two-way radios in the regular budget and not in new equipment. And conference and mileage, I'm not the one going to the national conference next year, it's Carol. So those are the differences. As far as personnel, we are losing a special education teacher to the high school and also a 6-hour special education assistant, and 1/10 of a PE teacher, which we reduced in all 3 schools. We took a hit in that area because of the lower enrollment. We're also all losing 1 hour of a computer assistant. I think it was Ben asked, are we improving lives or just delivering education? And that just made me think of our at-risk programs. Carol has Friends Too and the BIS program. At South School, we have the PFS program, which is Program for Success, or the Emotionally Handicapped program, and a number of ESL students. And when you said that, I can think of the dramatic changes we see in these children who come, especially our PFS children, who learn tremendous amount of self-control, their anxiety is lower, they experience success academically and socially, and they branch out and explore leadership opportunities, and that's just wonderful to watch. And ESOL, we have students in various levels of ESOL. This year we got a Russian student. When he came to school in August, hello was difficult for him, and now, just this week, we had a conversation with them about how much snow they get in Russia. So it's dramatic, the changes we see in our children. And yes, we are improving lives with these wonderful programs that do cost more money, but they make a tremendous difference.
Any questions for Linda, or you want me to go ahead first?
Any questions for Linda in South School? No? Budget Committee? Okay.
All right. And although we still claim the title of the largest elementary school in Londonderry, Matthew Thornton is once again coming into the budget season with a projected enrollment decrease of about 45 students. But after sitting in an overcrowded building for most of my 20-year career, as Nate said, it's a joy to finally return to appropriate use of our space. And by reducing our classroom numbers once again from 34 to 32, we will be able to maintain equitable class sizes with the other schools and still make use of the freed up space. Our plan is to split up one of the upstairs classroom to provide much needed special education space, so all of our special ed students will finally be out of the hallways and out of the cafeteria. The other space that is reclaimed this year will enable us to allocate space for a music room. So these 2 changes will fully use the space we have and allow us to continue to provide the excellence in an education that you've come to expect. As Nate said also, and we do teach with small groups now. Small groups dominate our instruction, but it allows us to tailor the instruction to the children and to really change lives. We're doing a wonderful job at educating our students, and we've always done that. But I think we're even doing better now. And when I look at all the assessments that we're doing, I see changes, as I know the other schools do too. And the changes are definitely for the better. We're grateful to the school board for the support you've provided for all of the programs, for the reading program that is based on current research on the way children learn to read, by our math program, which continues to demonstrate its success in our students' high math achievement on all the assessments that they get there, by supporting our PAWS program and the PBIS programs at North and South that allow us to spend less time on discipline and more time on instruction. So although we haven't increased the time that the students are in the schools, we have increased the time that we can spend on actually teaching them, and we're really happy about that. we're also thrilled that you continue to invest money in our physical plant. Matthew Thornton and I are the same age. We're getting older. And although we're the oldest building in the district, and maybe I'm the oldest administrator, I don't want to talk about that, we are able to provide.
I'm sorry, but wasn't Matthew Thornton built to replace the one-room schoolhouses?
Yes, it was.
Okay, sorry, Ron.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. It makes me feel much better. So we are able to provide a cheerful and well-maintained setting for our students and staff. It's amazing what you can do with just a little paint, a little dye. So, Technology Man has told us all about the cost savings we're making, and we appreciate him doing that. I guess the big savings at Matthew Thornton this year will be in personnel. We appreciate when our enrollment was growing, when Jim was at the helm, that you allowed us to hire much-needed staff. And now that our numbers have dropped, we've made cuts along the way to reflect the changes. We're hopeful that these cuts will help the district to provide a budget that will assist us in achieving the initiatives in the strategic plan, but also is highly cost-effective. And if you look at our budget is very similar to the other schools. The increases and decreases, I think, have all been explained away. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from the board? Seeing none, the Budget Committee? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, ladies.
Okay.
Nice job.
Our next meeting will be this Tuesday, and that'll be a regular board meeting at 7 o'clock in this room. And our budget meetings will continue on Thursday in this room at 7 o'clock.
Right.
Seeing no other action, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
No.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.